Does God care about small places? How can we faithfully serve Christ in a rural context? What is the future of the church in rural America? The Rural Ministry Podcast deals with questions like this and much more in the hopes of bringing practical resources and inspiring stories to help the church flourish in rural communities. Dr. Charlie Cotterman is the Executive Director at the Center for Rural Ministry, Assistant Professor of Biblical Studies at Grove City College, and the pastor of a rural church in Oil City, Pennsylvania. Join the conversation as we journey into the good things God is doing in small places. All right, well, welcome to another episode of the Rural Ministry Podcast, where we talk about the unique challenges and joys of living and doing ministry in rural places. I'm your host, Garrett Heath, Director of Media and Communications at the Center for Rural Ministry at Grove City College, and I'm joined by my co-host, Dr. Charlie Cotterman. Charlie is the Executive Director at the Center for Rural Ministry, Assistant Professor of Biblical Studies at Grove City College, and the pastor of Oil City Vineyard Church in Oil City, Pennsylvania. So in our last episode, we spoke with Pastor Mark Centel about doing some super practical ministry that can impact your communities in powerful ways, really over the long haul. You may want to check that out if you haven't yet. And today, we're going to dive even deeper into this idea of what flourishing can look like in our local communities, and specifically how we can build partnerships to help further the kingdom. And we have a couple special guests who are uniquely qualified, I think, to speak on this issue. So with us today are Susan Williams. She's the president and CEO of the Venango Area Chamber of Commerce in Venango County, Pennsylvania, and Trenton Moulin, who is president and CEO of Bridge Builders Community Foundations in Franklin, Pennsylvania. And I should mention we have some exciting collaborations planned at the CRM with our guests today. So I'm sure those plans might reveal themselves a little bit over the course of the episode here. But Charlie, you have, I know, some unique personal and ministry connections, even with our guests today as well, right?
I know. This is fun for me because it's like when you get to introduce people that you know and like to other people that you know and like, and you think they're going to just like each other. This is kind of what it is for me today. I had the chance to work with both Susan and Trenton on a number of things in Oil City and in Venango County and beyond. And they're doing great work. They've been at it for a while, just faithfully. And I can't wait to hear from them, because the other thing I will say at the beginning of this, because I can imagine some pastors out there saying, wait a second, we're in a rural ministry podcast and we're talking with the Chamber of Commerce leader and a community foundation leader. What does that have to do with my church and ministry? And what I'll say to start the conversation is more than you think, right? And so this is a conversation I think is going to be super helpful for people in small places. So if you're a little bit like, I don't know, stick with us. I think you'll find out that there's a lot here. So I guess maybe we should start by asking each of you, maybe we'll start with Susan, just to describe your organization and kind of the role it plays in the community I think a lot of people know there are chambers of commerce, but maybe they don't know what they do, and they think it's only about business and money. Like, what is a chamber of commerce, and specifically yours, and what's it doing in this community?
It's a great question, because when I came to the Chamber of Commerce in 2004, a little over 21 years ago, around 21 years ago, I didn't know what a Chamber of Commerce did. I was just barely familiar. We are a chamber that's been in existence since 1912, so we've been around a long time. And I'm quick to say that many of the things that we small rural chambers do today are the same things that were done 100 years ago. So we are a business organization. Our members are primarily businesses of all sizes, but the largest percentage are small businesses, so 10 and under employees. But we have larger businesses as well, corporate businesses, and nonprofits. So a significant number of our members are nonprofits, which include many churches. Our role is really to strengthen the community in a way that makes everyone flourish. So not to overuse that word at all. We're in the same business in many ways.
I don't think we can overuse the word flourishing, because I'm all about more flourishing. So I'm with you.
we're here to make sure that the soil is rich for everyone to be successful, with a real focus on business. And I want to be quick to say, too, that nonprofits are running businesses. So we want to respect that well-run nonprofits are following good business practices in how they are stewards of their money and of their their customers maybe look different than in businesses, but with their stakeholders.
Mm-hmm.
So as a chamber here, we again do many of those things that we've done for years, creating networks, hosting community events. We publish a monthly newsletter that is kind of the business magazine for our region. As a regional chamber, most of our members are in Venango County, but we have several that are outside of Venango County that really have a vested interest, either through a vendor relationship or customer relationship with others in our community. So they belong from outside that area. And then we can dig as deep as you would like, but one of the things that probably sets us apart from some small rural chambers is, one, the strength of my team. So there are 5 full-time employees here, which is really a good number for this this size of community. But that is only possible because of the strong programming we do around developing leaders, from our young leaders in our Flex program, that's our under 40s, through our leadership development that is meant for leaders of all ages and stages through Leadership Venango, and then through our Venango Ready program, which is our workforce and work readiness program, where we work with all of our local school districts on making sure students have the soft skills and are prepared to be successful when they go out into the workplace.
Yeah, no, it's great. And I've seen a lot of this programming up close. Just had a chance to speak with your Venango leadership cohort for this year last week. And I will say I was once in the Future Leaders and Entrepreneurs Exchange, the under 40 program, but I happen to have aged out, if you couldn't tell by the gray hair. So yeah, so you're doing so much good work in the community. And, and the other thing I'll just add is you guys also oversee the big community festival every summer, right? Like Oil Heritage.
We are the hosts for 2 community festivals. One is in Oil City, Oil Heritage Festival. I think this was our 43rd year, maybe more than that. We've been at it for a long time. And then Cranberry Festival, which we took on from a small community organization. That was about 18 years ago. And so now we've been the host of that festival. So we're kind of ground zero for both of those festivals. They only happen because of phenomenal partnerships throughout the community with both businesses, nonprofits, and community volunteers. But we're the ones that start each year, start fresh, and build those festivals to benefit our communities.
No, they're great. And that's something I'm putting a mental note here to come back to this festival idea, because I think there's something for churches there. We've talked about on an earlier podcast. I'm going to come back to that. But let's hear from Trenton. I know whenever I got to Oil City and we were planting our church back in 2016, I'm pretty sure I had never heard of a community foundation before, but I quickly heard and I still didn't know. So we had a conversation and I learned a heck of a lot about community foundations. But I'd love for you to tell our listeners what a community foundation is if they don't know about it, and then what you guys specifically do in the community.
Yeah, well, first off, thanks for having me. And it's good to be on a podcast with friends. And we've gone back a ways, and I appreciate the professional relationship, but also the personal side as well. And that's one of the benefits of rural ministry. So thank you very much. And it's a tough act to follow there, Susan. I kind of wish I went first, but the chamber is a big asset here in our community. And thanks for leading that, Susan. So a community foundation is a foundation that is for the benefit of a specific area. So we usually have a defined area or a set community, so to speak, that we're trying to benefit. And it works with donors to help on a philanthropic sense, right? So how do we work with donors to work with them for giving of all sorts, right? And all sizes. So specifically for that community. And I've been here about 15 years, and really it's never pulling a lever, right? It's always something new. There's specific needs that are specific to our community. So the saying in community foundation world is, if you've worked with a community foundation, you've worked with a community foundation. Because the community foundation it's a model. It's got certain tenets, right? Grant maker, working with philanthropic individuals, working with the community, but they're all different because the makeup of the community is different. And so Bridge Builders Community Foundation, we're celebrating our 50th year this year. It's been I've been here 15 years, and I've seen a big change since I've been here. But really, we're just
For
standing on
instance,
the shore.
Trenton, just tell us, like, when you got there, you guys were stewarding funds of like, what was that amount? It was like some 3 million, 5 million, something like
It
that.
was around 4.5, give or take, if I'm not mistaken. That's going back a
And
ways
now,
now. And we're at 23 million. So
wow,
yeah,
think about that.
it's my role's a lot different, but it shows the generosity of our community, and we'll be talking about that here in a little bit. I'm sure Susan will also. But the three main programs and projects that we have at the Community Foundation are, of course, our grants, which we grant out about $1.5 million every year. Our scholarships, which is around $450,000 a year to local students and learners of all types. And then we have an executive director roundtable. We have some programs around community data that you can find on our website, because we have to have that realistic view of our community. And we also have some things around housing and that type of thing. But really, we're just trying to be that neutral advocate for our community.
Yeah. No, I've seen that. I've seen that work. And the other interesting thing, and this is like kind of small town stuff, but it's the beauty of small town is that I'm pretty sure you guys have each served on each other's boards at times. And I know I've been on your board in the past, Trenton, your local Venango County board. So this is the kind of cool cross-pollinating that happens in small places where, you get to know other leaders, and it's easier. I mean, it's always a temptation, no matter where we are, to be in our own silos, our own organizational silos, but it's easier to branch out and to partner.
Right. And there's so much
if I
power
could
in
comment on that.
Oh, go ahead,
Yeah,
Susan.
for sure. Yeah, Susan, what was that?
I was going to say, if I can comment on that, yes, Trenton has, I was on his board for close to 20 years, and at one point did serve as president, and Trenton later served as president of my board. But I have to tell you, he knows my love and passion for the foundation. So when you ask him to explain, there's a little part of me that wants to say, I'll tell. Right. I love talking about the foundation and what it's done for our community. So I think we are, mutually have such respect and admiration for what our organizations can do.
Yep. Yeah. And both, absolutely. I have admiration for you, Susan, but also what the Chamber does for our community. And, I thought I knew it when I came on your board, but I really developed a real appreciation for what you do and what the Chamber does. So,
yeah. No, it's great. It's good stuff. And I've witnessed it up close and personal. One of my favorite stories, this was with Bridge Builders. So there was a project. It was in January. You'll remember this, I think, Trenton, where there was a family in Oil City that had a house that was abandoned next to their property. And they needed to get it torn down. And so we worked with Smile AmeriCorps and Bridge Builders and our church. And together we got a group of people to do this on Martin Luther King Day. However, it just so happened it was like 0 degrees. Like the church bought donuts and they were frozen solid. And there Trenton is, and I'm there, and a number of community leaders, and we have sledgehammers, and we're trying to take down this house. So it's like get your hands dirty kind of stuff sometimes.
So cold.
It was. Absolutely. Okay, so here's my next question. So this gets at something I mentioned earlier. It's great what you're doing, and we love to hear these stories of like organizations that care for their community. I love the contextualized part that if you know one community foundation, you've seen one community foundation. We say that about rural America. If you know one rural community, you know one rural community. You don't know rural ministry, you don't know rural church, you don't know rural America. It's so contextualized. But I can still hear churches saying, okay, so why does this matter for me? Right? And I think one of the things we can do in the next couple of minutes is expand the horizon. Like how can a church be involved? What does, what stands to be gained by a church from partnering with you guys? And what actually maybe could a church contribute that'd be meaningful to you guys? Like what's the relationship there?
Well, I'm happy to talk from the Chamber perspective, and I think it is mutually beneficial. So, when I think about the congregations, in fact, even the congregation I belong to is a very small rural congregation. And the people that from the pastor to the people that attend, they have been, and many are still involved in our business community. They are our stakeholders. So they are people that can reach out to the chamber when there's something that they need, whether it has to do directly with the church or with the businesses that they're part of. So we are here to be of assistance. I mentioned that we have a lot of nonprofits and churches that are members. There are often things that we can do that are really practical things, like helping them with a bulk mailing or helping them make a connection. And others are just part of our greater community vision that we work together to make a better, healthier, more vibrant community. But also we benefit. Those are often leaders that we want to be involved as a volunteer, or they might be someone that I reach out to as a leader for some mentorship, or Charlie, like you've come and spoken to our group. So I think there are so many opportunities for us to work together for the greater good. And I think we are more similar as organizations, and I'm sure this applies to the foundation too, from the chamber and the faith community. We operate, while yours might be to a much greater mission, we operate with a board of directors. We have stakeholders that we are really accountable to. There's so many things that we deal with day to day that are similar, and we can benefit from having a relationship with one another and an exchange of information on a very regular basis.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. No, that's great. What would you say, Trenton?
I'm going to give two examples, one abstract and one very concrete. And the abstract one is we're all threads in this community that make up the cloth that is our community, right? And churches are an integral portion of that bring people together, that disseminate that information for the common good, right? And so in many different levels, whether that be spiritually, whether that be communally, there's many different factors, and those threads all need to be there to hold us together. It's the fabric of our community. And then the more concrete is, especially in rural environs, we see churches as providing necessary services directly to the community in the areas that need it most. Right? We have food pantries, we have childcare, we have all these services that the churches maybe not only house, but staff and put time and effort and volunteer leadership around to make sure that those necessary services are being given where they're needed most. The areas I kind of think of are like Reimersburg and these smaller communities that those food pantries serve 700 meals a month to hungry families and what have you. I mean, they're the last mile. That's the most difficult when it comes to food delivery and food insecurity. And I can keep on going down. And, those are some of my concerns about what's going to happen, but they're integral to that community and propping them up in very needed ways. So,
yeah. Well, no, that's a great word, because I do think of churches, a lot of times churches and schools as being kind of some of the last anchor institutions in small places that pull the community together in larger ways, and then there is this kind of, I love David Brooks has this idea of weavers in communities, right? And that's like kind of like knitting things together for people that knit things together.
That's where I got it, Charlie.
It's good stuff, man. I use that too. So Trenton, this might be a good segue into this Rural Impact Fund and what the Center for Rural Ministries doing with you all. And this is a really cool thing as we were thinking about our last grant proposal, thinking like, how do we make a difference? Like not just, regionally or like nationally, like hiring a media communications guy like Garrett, who's pulling this all together. That was awesome. But we're like, how do we actually help local churches? And because I had worked with bridge builders and knew how you guys worked and knew that you knew the lay of the land, I was able to say, you know what, we need to pull a couple community foundations into this. And will you tell us about that, Trenton, and about the fund and how it's kind of rolling out?
Yeah, well, I really appreciate your idea. I really appreciate you reaching out to us as a possible partnership, and now it's a formal partnership. But we're working together on the Rural Impact Fund, and this is a fund to assist rural congregations meet the most pressing needs in their community. And how do we anchor and how do we assist them being more of an anchor in the community that they already are, right? And so we created a grant program, and that's really our wheelhouse, right? We make community grants. And so we had a lot of relationships already with many parishes and congregations throughout our area. So we leaned in on those. We got some feedback from them. We worked with Charlie and his group to really form a grant program that would hopefully reinforce those churches being anchors in the community, and the community be better served in a lot of different ways. And so we're really appreciative of the partnership. We've accepted the first round of applications. We're going to be vetting those soon. We're really excited about that, because that first round can then lead to a second round for the most successful programs. And it comes out of relationship. It comes out of partnership. It comes out of being overly communicative. It comes out of being very open and honest, and working together to find that overlap in that Venn diagram with your organization, with our organization. But also, it just comes down to being able to work together for the common good, and a lot of things underpin that. And we could make a whole other series of podcasts about that. But it really comes down to relationship and honesty and open transparency and what have you. So we're really excited about it. We're really excited about being those resources for those community, for the churches, being a resource for you, and that exchange of information, I think, on all those channels is going to be beneficial for you at the rural ministry. It's going to be beneficial for us as a community grant maker and community advocate. There's so many tie-ins, and
Yeah, absolutely. And the way these grants work is $2,500. Churches can apply for up to $2,500 for kind of community-facing projects. But like, we tried to write in partnership so they can partner with a non-church community nonprofit member and get up to $4,000 together. So we're basically, the whole thing is around partnering for the good of the community, with the Center for Rural Ministry, with Bridge Builders, and then with potentially other organizations. So we're trying to just create this culture of partnership, and honestly just help churches fund the things they're already doing that are so great for the community. All right, I want to jump here to something else. I want you guys to tell us kind of what you see kind of on a ground level, and of course it's the same thing we talked about earlier. It's contextualized to this community that you're in and the communities, plural, that you serve. But it is like, in some sense, we live in a kind of small town, a rural county. It's like 55,000 people-ish in the county. By most accounts, it would be kind of post-industrial, or at least like the major first thrusts of an industry went through, and now maybe some new are coming in that people need to hear about. But so it's like a lot of, especially across the Rust Belt, a lot of communities, small towns. What do you see as the needs, and then maybe transition from needs to opportunities that churches should be aware of and that you see?
Well, I think this is one of those places where we share a lot of the same challenges that other rural communities do, both across the state and across the country. Those things of food insecurity, of housing, of I want to say of jobs, but the reality for us, and I would guess for most other communities, there are more jobs available and more resources available than people know about. So for me, one of the biggest challenges we have in communities is the sharing of information. We make a lot of assumptions about what is or is not available in the community, and don't always share the information as well as we could. This is a great opportunity, I think, for churches, because we see in rural churches that the congregations are now made up of members who are from more vast areas. I grew up at a time where everyone that went to our church was probably walked to church. We were from the same community. That's no longer the case. So it's the perfect opportunity to be sharing the information about what's available in a larger region across congregations. And then those same people go back to different places of work. And so to be sharing the resources for people that need food, that need better housing, that are looking for work opportunities. And one of the greatest ones that is really challenging for rural communities is transportation.
Yeah.
It's very costly, and it's very individual what people's needs are.
Yeah.
I'm going to echo a lot what Susan said around the needs. We have food deserts, right? If you got to travel 40 minutes to get groceries, that could be a factor, right? We have banking deserts now, which are, we all don't know how to use the app, right? We don't know how to wire money or Venmo money, et cetera. We have an aging population, which has its own bucket of needs. Medical access. We have a lot of the small, practitioner shops closing. Transportation. We have medical access issues around maternity care and prenatal care and that type of thing. That's a big one. Birthing centers are closing because it's not a profitable thing. And this is more intangible, but I think a real issue that we have in our rural environs is an issue of isolation, right? And I think that's a real big something that churches can lean into to help solve that isolation factor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even to that last point, I mean, that's an American thing too, or maybe I would say a Western kind of civilization thing right now, where like the Surgeon General just a couple years ago had a report on the epidemic of loneliness, right? So, but when you compound like our natural proclivity to be in our own phones, our own screens, and be kind of separated with like geographic distance in a rural place or a lack of transportation, it can just compound for sure. And that's something I think, as I'm hearing you guys talk, and we're going to transition to opportunities in just a second, but I'm thinking about the way conversations happen in small places. It's usually, we are a culture of extremes right now in every basically way you can imagine that, in every sphere of culture. And when we talk about rural places, we are kind of talking in extremes a lot of times. And that's why I appreciate you naming some of these challenges, but we're going to also go to opportunities, because what you often get in a rural community is you get like, there's a category of folks that tell like nothing good can happen here. Everything was in the past. We're doomed. Get out as fast as you can. And then there's like the small town booster mentality. It's like everything's great. Everything's like up and to the right, And the reality is it's like somewhere in between, just like any community, any size community, somewhere in between, right? So I appreciate that you're, because you guys are leading organizations that you are advocating for your communities, and you should be, but you still have to be able to see the needs. But now I want to give you a chance to kind of riff on the things that I know you're really good at too, is like the opportunity. So tell me about the opportunities in your community, but also just maybe these are applicable to all small towns.
I'm happy to jump in first. I think that one of the things that Trenton is actually an example of for me is understanding that we have young people who want to be part of our community. Many of them are here right now. They want to be more highly engaged. I talk just even in the last few days, I've talked to from 8-year-olds to 18-year-olds about their interest in investing in our community. Actually, the 8-year-olds who wanted to invest in business and the 18-year-olds that just want to know more about what's going on and how they can be involved. And when we involve our children while they're here, there is far more likelihood that they'll want to either stay here or return here, which going away and coming back is fine. So I was so fortunate to get to know Trenton as a very young man, which he is still young, but he was a very young man then, and help build community around him, help with the rooting of having him have relationships that would better assure that a life here would be meaningful for him. And that's something that I think we can all work at. There's, everyone that we encounter is an opportunity to better engage and help people understand those opportunities. So that's the big one for me. But I know throughout our community, we have people that want to, whether financially invest or do time investment or, take advantage of the opportunities to get more education. There's so many ways to be here. So I'll just drop that in. Mm-hmm. One of the valued programs of our chamber is our Be Here initiative, which is really about just helping people truly engage in the community they're in. So you can be here wherever you are, but my focus is to be here Venango. And so wherever you are, finding ways for you to be better engaged in the way you want to be in the community.
Yeah, no, that's good. And by the way, we're going to put a link to the Be Here video you guys did a few years back. That Garrett and I played a small role in that video. So we'll put a link in that. That was a fun project for sure. But yeah, absolutely. That's some great stuff. Trenton, you want to keep riffing on that a little bit?
Yeah, I'm going to springboard off of Susan, and I try to take my own take on her empowering and connecting young people, because that's such a key component, right? And we're trying to do that institutionally, and how do we make sure that we're hearing from every age bracket, so to speak? How do we make sure we're led by every age bracket? I mean, it's difficult because as I'm no longer that young professional like you, Charlie, a lot more gray in my beard here, but right. You got to listen to those younger voices and make sure that those other perspectives are heard, but not only heard, but implemented and acted on. So that's getting tougher as I get older, but we have to do that if we're going to be a vibrant community. So and I appreciate and thank Susan every day for doing, connecting me and putting my roots down and everything like that whenever I move back to the area. So some of the other opportunities I think we have is to counterbalance that isolation. We have a sense of community, right? Like whenever the storm hits and all the trees are knocked down, the neighbors that don't talk to each other get together and get the chainsaw out and fix everything. And that might help, mend those fences. I mean, we really come together whenever difficult situations arise, and we see past our differences. Whether we admit it or not, we do. And that's always helpful. And another opportunity that we have specifically in rural areas is that a small group of individuals can really make a big impact.
Yep.
A lot more than I think in the urban areas. Those things happen as well. But I think that when you have a small group of committed individuals in a rural area, about whether that's a community issue or a congregation issue or a school board issue, for better or worse, you can make a big impact. And I think there's a lot of people in there for the positive good. And that's something that I really appreciate moving back, is that it just seems like you can make a bigger impact as a small group and that type of thing. And also, I think because we're rooted in those rural aspects of understanding where our food comes from, understanding kind of those life and death issues, we have a culture of giving back, right? And it's ingrained in our worldview. And that might be through philanthropic ways that I see, but it might be in those unheralded small ways that just rural communities give back. And it's in what we do, in the small things and the big things. And that's something that I don't think that other areas have. And they might have it in different ways, but we really have that. And I'd love to know the roots of this. I've been asking every wise person in my area, what are those roots of, why is it in our culture here in the rural environments, but it's not other places? And we'll talk about it sometime, Charlie, but I have my ideas, but I'd love to hear the group's ideas too, and who listens to this, because it really is ingrained in our worldview and in many different facts. And I appreciate that, especially running a foundation.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and when I think about that last bit, I think there's probably lots and lots of reasons, but one thing that stands out to me as I think about it, just kind of off the cuff, is that if communities are more human and human scaled, like if you actually know real people and not just groups of people or people online, you feel a human obligation and a desire to actually help more easily, right? Because they're real neighbors, they're real people that when someone, gets a bad illness or has a horrible thing happen and the community comes around, it's not just some random person, like it's a teacher in your kid's school or whatever. So I think there's something there, and maybe that's a good way to kind of transition to like the just kind of out of this conversation. But I just want to make a couple reflections because I think we could talk a long time. But just a couple of things, that I was thinking about as you guys were talking. And I'm scribbling notes down here on my paper. So the things I think about that you guys provide to the community, there's a number of things. And of course, even practical things like grant giving and leadership development programs and things like that really matter. But there's this idea of social capital. So I think about this in terms of the church, but I think you guys are doing it too. So there's a book that came out in 2000, very famous, by a Harvard sociologist called Bowling Alone, right? About how we're, all these things. We don't bowl in leagues anymore. We bowl by ourselves. And it said actually that churches were the biggest repository of social capital left in the country, which is a fascinating thing. We should put this in the show notes, Garrett. But I think any organization that's bringing people together across like demographic lines and age lines and stuff is creating social capital. So I think churches can do that really well. But I think your organizations are doing that too, where you're knitting. We already talked about this, bringing people together, helping people know each other, because you just don't know what you don't know, and you just don't know who you don't know. And honestly, if we don't know people, we're actually giving up one of the greatest benefits of a rural community, in that you can actually know your neighbors and figure out who you can work with and do things together, right? And the second thing I thought about as you guys were talking, and some of this was explicit, leadership development, right? And I think your organizations in the church do this in small towns in a really powerful way. Because if you want to talk about how young people learn how to lead an organization, well, Maybe it starts by being on a board or on a committee in a church, in a community foundation, in a chamber, where you're over one little small part, but then as you develop your leadership there, the next thing you know, you're leading at higher and higher levels, right? And so in small towns, there's a lot of open invitation for young people and people of any age that haven't led before to come into new leadership positions. And you guys are opening those doors. So that's amazing, I think.
Charlie, I'd love to speak to that. That is all so true. And I think that opportunity to actually know each other is so very important. And I think to speak each other's names. When I think about that isolation that happens when often we sit in front of our screens and we're looking at our social media and we make overarching comments or assumptions about each other without really trying to know one another, that is a bad path to be on. And it's one of the things that I know Trenton and I are both really committed to, is making sure that people know other people, that we can make introductions and connections, so that before you pass judgment on what's happening in the community or what any group is doing, get to know who the people are, get to know their names. I'm quick to say, if there's somebody you want to know, buy me a cup of coffee or let me buy you one, and we'll put people together so that we can actually know each other. We come to life through very, very different perspectives. It's an important part of what we do in our leadership program, and what I do when I'm mentoring young people is help people understand that we all have different lived experiences. And when we actually are open to sitting kind of eyeball to eyeball with each other and getting to know each other and why we believe what we believe, that's the start of really growing communities that care about one another.
So good. I think that's a good way to send us out, Garrett. What do you think?
I think so too. Yeah. Thank you so much, Susan, Trenton. We could have elaborated for hours, I think, on this. Yeah. So maybe we'll return to this conversation at some point.
Love that.
Maybe even sharing some stories out of our recent CRM partnership as well in the future. So, but yeah, thank you both. Yeah, and thank you everybody for listening. We hope our conversation today has provided you with some encouragement, insight, maybe even a practical idea for your own ministry context. The Rural Ministry Podcast is part of the good work being done at the Center for Rural Ministry at Grove City College. If you found this podcast helpful today, there are a few free things you can do to help us out. First, you can share this episode with a friend or colleague who could benefit from it. Second, you can leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. This helps more people discover our show. And lastly, leave us a comment or suggestion on the episode page over at the Center for Rural Ministry YouTube channel. We hope to get some good conversations started over there as well. And thanks again for listening. You can learn more about our mission by visiting www.ruralministry.org. Have a great week.